or you just scan and pay, and you never see the money. Will then your sense of like ownership change?
You know, everyone has some sort of relationship to their banks, and we are definitely, connected to the banks. But an interesting thing was that they see Swish as, this friend in their everyday life, never or rarely remind a friend that owes them money.
Hi and welcome to the Next Gen Retail Pod. I'm John Karsberg, Head of Strategy and Insights with Workshop, and we're sitting here at Mariatorget in our, for the day or for a couple of months now, refurbished reception, where we now have a pop-up store. It's actually Zalando's first physical pop-up store, if I'm not wrong, with a street concept called Arena. So we're actually very happy to be able to record the pod here, which is very, very relevant to today's topic, where we'll talk about like payments and peer-to-peer and business-to-business and business-to-consumer and consumer behavior around payments one way or another. And I think that looking at payments, there are of course lots of things that's happening now with tech development. And I usually, when I talk around consumer behavior and experiences, I always try to highlight at the end of an experience is, of course, it's extra important than according to something called the peak end rule. And there is usually, that's where like payments and parting with some kind of resource and some kind of exchange comes into place. So of course, if we want to give a great experience to consumers, then the payment or the end part is extra important. Basically that's. I'm very, very happy to have someone here, Stina Engström from Swish, to be able to help me dig a little bit more into this topic that I think is important and really, really interesting. So welcome, Stina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, could you just first elaborate a little bit on who you are, and then just give me an example of like a fantastic brand or just something, just to give a glimpse of who you are.
Absolutely. So I work as a service designer at Swish since for 2 years back. I started there, and originally I studied industrial design to begin with, but I only spent like 1 or 2 years designing physical products before moving into designing services and experiences and so on, supporting companies to, develop their customer experience at the very best. So I worked quite a while at different design agencies for about 9 years. But then 2015, I moved in-house, starting at H&M Group, where I stayed for 7 years. And now since 2 years back, I'm at Swish.
Yeah, and we met at H&M.
Yes.
Some years ago now, and where we were kind of part of the same group, then being extremely nerdy, interested in consumer behavior, and actually making sure that everything that the H&M group did or we did at the time was then in line with or had the value to the consumer, and that we really understood where things were going. So we'll get back a little bit to that. But then some kind of a favorite brand.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about that, and it's difficult. But one thing that I definitely enjoy every time, and I think it goes outside the actual store experience, is the brand Aesop, skin and body care brand. Yeah. And it's not only about the products, they are amazing, but I think the store experience is, have a high level of detail in the customer interaction and the personal service, and they keep track on what you have bought before and so on. But it's very expensive, so this is one of my top, things on my wish list for my birthday. And when I actually have something in my, something like a, what do you call it? Like some product at home. Yeah. I'm very careful about when using it because I want it to last really long.
Yeah, but then do you not use it enough then? Or do you kind of forget it? Because it's also worth more on you than in your like cabinet. But maybe that's...
Yeah, I use it to make it last long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I just first want you to tell a little bit more about like service design and the methodology, because since I did quite some research, it was a lot about like quantitative research for me at the time, but I've kind of drifted more and more into qualitative research and really trying to be curious and really trying to understand people. And I know that's a little bit more of what then the service design methodology and what it's, but please could just walk me through that a bit.
Absolutely. I think I can talk about the thing I'm doing at Swish is quite similar to sort of the role and the responsibility I had as a service designer when working at H&M Group as well. So one part is really about, supporting the organization to become even more customer-centric, because no matter what you're working with and how your contribution in your role is connected to, the customer and the value we're trying to bring, it's so important that everyone knows and understand and emphasize and, get to know the ones we're here to serve within a company. So it's a lot about, gathering insights and making that knowledge about the end user or the customer available to anyone in the organization. So everyone can, put the customer at the center of everything we do. And what else?
But that sounds like every organization should have at least one service designer then, because we talk about.
I think so.
Yeah, we talk about being customer-centric, passionate, obsessed, or whatever all the time, and we all know, or at least we say, and it's on lots of PowerPoints, that we need to understand and focus on that. But then, and we also know that brings a lot of value, also profit, and the companies that are focused on the customer are actually doing better. Yeah. So then we should hire at least one then in every organization.
Always. And then, so one part is really about, gathering those insights, understanding for real how people think, feel, and act connected to the line of business you're in and what you're trying to, achieve. But also I work more hands-on because I don't, for me, those insights are sort of the fuel to understand what matters the most, what problems to solve or opportunities to capture. So I use design both as a sort of way to explore future directions and, relevance and understanding the customer, but also more as a process when defining that problem and then finding the best solution for it. You can really use design methodology and the process and the approach in those kind of ways. So involving people in that process and not only stakeholders or internal, experts in different ways. Those are definitely needed, but also make sure that you involve the ones meant to use what you're creating at the end to make sure that you're on top and relevant and, providing something of value that people want to use and enjoy and give some sort of, solve something for them or gives them
So basically you then inject that insights into the discussions around, I guess, innovation or service design or what services then to be designed and then to be delivered, which I think is maybe then even more important now when things are a bit difficult to navigate, when there's so much tech, there's so much international competition and so many different players that are on the field. So I think it's at least my experience is that it's increasingly difficult to navigate and to keep track of what's important. So that's also why I think it's so good to create like a model and try to really understand what is important to the end consumer and then try to keep like that as a North Star somewhere.
Yeah, definitely to the end customer, but also making sure that you align that you're creating both customer and business value that is in line with what your goals as a company, what you're trying to achieve and the direction you're in and the position you have on the market. So it's not either or, it's definitely both of them.
Yeah. Cool. But then let's talk a little bit more around. First, just tell us about what Swish is, and maybe we can compare it, I guess, to Venmo or to Vips in Norway, or there are different things.
Yeah.
And then a little bit on what you've done there, and how that, and also some results. So what is important to people?
Yeah, definitely. So about Swish, most people in Sweden know what Swish is because we have 8.5 million users and more than 300,000 companies connected to Swish.
And for everyone, Sweden is not that much more than 8.5 million people living in Sweden. So it's
I think it's more than 10 at least.
But it's a vast majority at least.
Definitely. So we are a mobile payment service where you can both send and receive money from and to your bank account, but just by using a mobile phone. And it's you can use it between people. If I'm owing you money, I can just repay you really quickly. Or if I, buy something secondhand, I can pay easily to someone I don't know as well. But you can also use it as a regular payment method in store, online, and in apps and so on.
It started very much peer-to-peer, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then it has developed with
exactly.
the last years.
So in the beginning, this was a cooperation actually between the 6 biggest banks in Sweden. And at the beginning, it was a pure peer-to-peer service, just private people settling debts with each other. Yep. But then I think, I don't remember exactly when it was, but quite some time ago, it also started to be used and implemented as a payment method for companies. And now we actually have more than half of the transactions is commerce. So it's an interesting development.
And then you did some then consumer research. I know, since I have had some chats before with you. But why? What like the interest and the need for that?
Well, it comes back to customer centricity and how I view my role, and also the purpose of why I was brought in, definitely. Because I came in just as H&M Group. I was the first service designer at H&M Group globally, 2015. And then when I moved over to Swish 2 years ago, I started sort of a similar approach, like understanding where the company is at in terms of customer centricity, getting to know the culture, trying to gather information about what we know. And then, of course, understanding, which isn't unusual, that, okay, so we know a lot about the customers and the users. And it's data and analytics and, separate investigations. But we're not really having that common view and joint understanding about how people think, feel, and act in connection to what we do. So I initiated a project that we call Swish in Everyday Life, where we're focusing first then. I started with understanding the private users, because those 8.5 million people, we are the strongest brand. People do love us, but we definitely need to, make sure that we develop to be, in a good way. We can solve even more problems. So that was the starting point. So what we wanted to understand was how do people, what do people think about when it comes to money between people, but also payment methods. When do they use different payments in different contexts, and what's their view on Swish as a brand, and how do they experience us, and what could be, understand more about how people are using it, and also to identify, of course. The purpose was also not only gathering these insights, but identify areas of opportunities and unmet needs and ways that we could, widen our relevance and become even better of supporting people's everyday life.
And some key takeaway. I know you can probably talk about this for like a couple of weeks, but some key takeaways.
Absolutely. Some key takeaways is definitely that yes, people do love us because they see Swish as someone who really solved an accurate problem back in the days where we, now you can just easily settle debt and so on between each other in a really quick and simple and, secure way. Another thing is that, money as a topic, especially here in Sweden, it's quite awkward to talk about, and that can create, it's socially sensitive, so it creates a lot of friction and obstacles in social relationships. And we also learned that 75% of the people we asked, because we first started doing qualitative research, but then we wanted to follow up some of those initial insights to really deepen and understand and get some sort of level of making sure that is this correct, how big is this, and so on. And it turned out that 75% of the people we asked, and this was a survey covering 1,000 people, never or rarely remind a friend that owes them money. So this is definitely something that people do and tend to do, but they also, this affects relationships. And people are afraid to be seen as greedy or cheap and so on. So that was very interesting. Another thing that was interesting with the insights we got from this is that we're definitely seen as, everyone has some sort of relationship to their banks, and we are definitely, connected to the banks. But an interesting thing was that they see Swish as, this friend in their everyday life, warm, simple, fun, quite neutral as well. We're not trying to nudge anyone to do something or buy something or stuff like that. And, we are quite used to being, nudged in different directions all the time. But another thing from this was definitely that we saw that we could, even if we have very satisfied users, there's so much potential in when we understood the different kinds of situations that people are in regarding money and people and payment every day. So we have discovered definitely a lot of opportunities to strengthen the peer-to-peer experience, because we also see the strength of being so present in people's lives as a way to become even more chosen as a payment method as well. So.
Yeah, because you've moved a bit more into the business side or the more business transactions side also relatively lately then, but and based then on some insights from the research you said.
I guess you're thinking about the new feature that we just launched. Yes, and that's very exciting because we just this spring launched a completely new way for people to use Swish, which is to use it as a self-scanning products in store and just pay immediately just by using the Swish app. Which is, of course, something that, for consumers and the customers, a good thing is that you don't have to download a specific retail app. And we know that people are, they just have a few of those and you don't really want to download something new. So why not use an app that you already have? Another thing is that you can, have alternatives. Not having to stand in line. And of course, we already see a lot of self-service checkout options in stores and retails today. But here we see also that, this number is growing. People are starting to use more and more self-services. And also the fact that you can only, use your own phone and so on. And for merchants, the benefits are really that they don't have to necessarily invest in expensive hardware. They don't have to develop their own app, and not everyone can have those muscles. And then also the fact that they, access 8.5 million consumers ready to start using self-service options in their context. Yeah.
And when it comes to like what you saw, if you general like payment behavior then, or so, is it the digitalization of using your phone that is the most important trend, or what's going on now, or are there any other things that you've seen or that
we have been seeing for quite some time, and the topic about how to use the different channels, in the best way possible to accelerate and, improve the customer experience. I know that I worked a lot with that at H&M Group, and even if we see that, we see some good examples of integrating, using the strength from online into the physical experience. I think we're still, retailers of today is, trying to find the balance between the, where to really use the human personal service and where, is it best to have alternatives and options to manage on your own and so on. So I think it's about giving options to the customers.
When it comes to, of course, a lot is driven and has been for some time by both credit cards and everything. So cash is losing traction. Mm-hmm. And I am in general, but this is more of a general curiosity about like cash that is basically vanished from most kids' lives, and people are not counting cash anymore. Yeah. And what that will do with us. Was there anything that in your research, when you talk to lots of consumers, that was involving cash or different?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when talking to young people, it was quite interesting to. I remember one guy. He maybe was 16 years old, and he had like a long reflection about when the hassle he finds himself in when he sometimes get an envelope with money from his grandmother or something. Yep. And he's like, I don't know what to do with it. It's like pretend money. So I only, always give it to my mom so she can make it into real money that I can use. Yeah. Because the perspective is sort of like, it's a paper note. Yeah. I don't know. I can't use it hardly anywhere, and I don't know what to do with it.
And I read something that I thought was interesting, that you, especially now when cash is not that common, you kind of see cash, you spend cash when you kind of withdraw the money. So that's when you feel the effect of it. So then the balance will go down. But then the actual spending of the cash, that's almost for free. So if you have like a bank note, that's almost like free money. Yeah. You can buy something and it would be, it's really an interesting, different way of looking at it. We were talking about that before also. There's a phenomenon that I've read about and I've understood that's called cash stuffing, where I think it's like a TikTok trend or something amongst some kids, probably not global, probably not everywhere, and probably not everyone, but where you actually save money in like envelopes, and kids start doing that. So you have like a $20 bill in your vacation envelope, or your like entertainment, or maybe music and stuff, and people are actually physically then starting to save. Maybe it's like a counter reaction to everything that is digital. I don't know. What's there?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's such a, tangible and concrete way to see, how am I supposed to spend my money? Because I don't know how common it is to, make serious budgets and stuff like that. But we definitely also learned that a lot of people have some sort of, organizing their everyday spending and economics putting them in sort of different piles, but in different accounts for different purposes, definitely, like food and entertainment and just, the bills and so on.
But what do you think? Because there's, of course, like a data, like a secured data part to this, and so much, and you can, of course, help people, and you know how much they then owe friends and also payments and stuff. Was that a concern that came up? Are people scared of that, or is that not something that because you feel so trusted, so it's not something that people are worried about when it comes to Swish? Or
we actually don't know so much because we have to keep in mind that, and this is one thing that I find really interesting with working at Swish. Not only the fact that it relates to everyone, and money is something that we use and spend in our everyday life for different, in different ways all the time, but also there's a bit of interesting setup, because if we look at our target group, we as Swish, our paying customer is actually the participating banks. So we offer our service for them to offer their customers. And their customers, there's both private people, but also companies.
Yeah.
So our users are the participating banks' customers. So they get provided to access and use Swish through their bank. So it's their bank more than it is us.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I we should not start to go into the whole architecture of the payment market, because I know that I've worked with some partners and stuff around this, and they have tried to explain all the different roles in this whole like architecture of what is payments. Yeah. And I don't really have it all clear. So
no, me neither. But I love the fact that we have so brilliant and excited people that really love to deep dive around those kind of things at my job.
If we're starting to look a little bit into then the future.
Yeah.
What is were there any surprise, anything that you feel okay we found these things and this is what's going to accelerate into the future? Maybe you're developing some services based on that, of course, so you don't have to disclose everything, but if there's what's going to come? Are we going back to cash because there will be a complete counter reaction, or is everything just going to be blinking eye blinks and then it's transferred? Or
one thing I see relating to technology, and maybe not, it's both about, the future, but also the word we tend to use around, the future, which is innovation.
Yep.
And innovation is usually a word, associated with technology. And I think for me, it becomes so clear that for me, innovation is not at all about technology. Technology is definitely a super important enabler when we know what we're trying to achieve and turn that into a reality. And definitely it could come with new opportunities. But innovation has to start with defining the right problem to solve, and then finding the best way to solve it. And when you know that, and you're doing the things that matter for both the customer and to the business and to the planet and so on, that is when technology comes in, I think. Yeah. But so many needed. But when it comes to the future, I definitely think that, we need to, start becoming more circular, as we all know.
I think that when it comes to circularity, because one thing that I've been pondering around is that with more and more automatic payments, even I've been to like Amazon Go stores and other things. It's very, very automatic. You don't have to do much, or you just scan and pay, and you never see the money. Will then your sense of like ownership change? Because if I'm in this store, for example, here there are no transactions. You basically scan something, you go to the web page, and then you can check out. But in an Amazon Go store, you pick some things, or in other stores, and then you just basically go out. I would at least, but maybe that's because I'm conservative and old, but feel that's a bit strange. When I leave an Amazon Go store, pick some things, and I don't really feel, at least, that I own things. And I don't know, or it feels a little bit strange. And also, if I were just to pick a few garments here and leave, it's not possible. It's not RFID, by the way, the store, so you're not allowed to. But
no, I won't. I won't do it.
But I think that it's interesting then the sense of ownership and what that does, and if that will mean that it will be easier to, if we feel that we own it, we're a little bit less attached to some things. Maybe it's easier than to resell it. It's easier to have a circular economy around it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or you don't give a shit because you don't feel like you own it much, so you don't care, which make it less or worse. I don't know.
I wonder if
speculating.
I wonder if it depends on what you're buying. Like it's something that you're gonna consume and use immediately, like groceries, or also the whole service experience. That's not a product that you're leaving. You're paying for using something or getting access to something and so on. But you see, I have kids at home, and they buy and sell things secondhand all the time. And I definitely see, this is not based on research, just my private experience.
Private research.
But definitely see them having a more of a, circular, content in their wardrobe, for instance. So maybe it has to do with that attachment and so on. But when it comes to we are changing our behaviors a lot. You can just walk into a store and grab something and go out and just pay without doing something.
Some stores, yeah.
In some places. But I also find it very interesting about those unmanned stores that are opening up in Sweden as well. Not only in the, countryside, but also as a way to prolong opening hours and make the assortment and what you're selling available to your customer in many different smart ways. And I think that's, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops in Sweden. I think they're iterating and finding, the way. But it's an interesting way to see an actual problem and a customer need of access, or being able to shop when the store is closed, and then making that into a reality. But I also was thinking about, we are that one thing that makes it so interesting about working also at Swish is that even if our product is purely digital, it's an app, that's what it is. But the context it's being used in is far from only digital. It's human, it's social, it's physical, spatial. So I think this comes back to everyone designing experiences and brand experience, all the things. We need to be aware about both the emotional needs, like knowing if I can leave, have I done things correctly, am I good to go, but also the functional needs, like how am I supposed to do everything at once when I only have two hands? So it really comes into making sure that we look at things holistically and not only at one touch point at the time, because they all interact and people are in different situations as well. They could be, lying at home and, having a calm time. Everything is, you have control. But you can also be standing on the subway, doing some errands, finishing some business, arranging a party at the same time, collecting money for a joint cause or something, someone's birthday or someone, when standing there with a lot of other people. So it's, so many things are happening that we need to be aware of when designing experiences.
Yeah, basically going back to understanding the end user and the context and the reality and the need, and going back to the why, basically. You mentioned Aesop before. Are there any other, when it comes to this experience, that you would want? What maybe, I don't know if it's we can get like the payment or that issue in particular, but is there any other like things that you look at or feel that this is good from a work perspective? Or
absolutely. And I was thinking about that when talking about innovation and technology and so on. I sometimes feel like you can see some sort of tendency that sometimes consumers are almost forced into using something, like now you're gonna do like this because we decided. And I think what I find important is to provide options and alternatives to people, because everyone is different and the situations are different. And connecting back to an example that I've been thinking about is Max Burgers, because they are interesting in the fact that they definitely pushed, pushing the screens of self-service and managing on your own at the very front in their restaurant, but still keeping the regular, you're able to order at the counter. The counter instead, if you want, but also well-designed flows, and people know what to do, and they can spend their time hanging out with friends and family instead of standing in line. So it is an alternative if you don't want to do the old-fashioned way, but you can also even start the order before you come there. So a really great example of an app experience where it's easily to order, but also, arrange when to pick it up and so on. And also a great example of when Swish as a payment method works at its very finest, because it's app to app, it's quick, convenient, a regular thing in their everyday life. So I would guess that a lot of customers would choose that payment option, but also have the ability to choose others. And I think that for me, it's very important to provide alternatives, because we need to, suit everyone, what works for them, just today, or the mood they're in, and so on, and not forcing customers in one direction.
Yeah. Thanks. Let's see if we can summarize and find something. I think we all need to understand the end consumer and to put a lot of effort into really being inside people's heads and understand the why to be able to design good services. And then every company, every organization needs at least one service designer then. So now all the peaks for all schools and stuff, there will be an international peak in applications for service designers across the globe, which is fantastic, of course.
I hope so.
And cash will not come back, being very important. The most important thing is to then serve the customer, understand the context, and have different alternatives, relatively seamless. And I don't know. Is there anything that I'm missing?
Is there anything that you're missing?
Being on people's side, and of course, embrace technology, but not seeing technology as innovation, but technology is more of a means to innovate. I
mean, opportunities can appear, of course, due to a new technology, new techno breakthrough. But you still need to go back to that question, like, what is the problem to solve and how can we best solve it? Yeah.
Thanks for chatting with me. It's been a delight.
Thank you for having me.
And let's see where we will end up in some years.
Yeah.